Graduation decades in the making has finally come for one woman.
There was a big thing that had never been finished in my life, and now it has been.
Yes, it has. At 88 years old, Joan Alexander has likely become the oldest University of Maine graduate. Her journey into higher education began when she first attended UMaine in 1955 until 1959. While she completed all of her coursework, because she was pregnant, she was not allowed to do her required student-teacher training. Well, 66 years later, Joan's daughter, Tracy, took her transcript and experience as a preschool teacher in 1980 to UMaine officials, who certified that Joan completed all necessary graduation requirements. And last month, it was official. Joan received her Bachelor of Science in Education. For her, the degree shows that hard work does not go unnoticed, even if it takes time.
I'd like to think that what happened to me is encouraging to other people who might possibly be in a similar situation. And at the end of something I wrote, I said, "Don't give up, don't give up. Keep working."
I would say encouraging and inspiring. Now living in New Hampshire, UMaine's assistant dean personally took the trip down to hand deliver Joan's cap, gown, and diploma.